It's so stupid. But there's nothing I love more than college football. And Pat Bostick walks in here and has ruined our studio monitor. We can't look at ourselves anymore. We're not going to be able to see Bill Hillgrove when he joins us at 7:50. This guy comes in. He's breaking stuff. It's fixed. I'm sorry.
Was that sarcasm?
What do you mean?
I always put him up.
No, he turned it
Has
off.
nothing to do with you. He unplugged something.
Don't insert yourself into this conversation.
Yeah, you didn't screw up.
I was being slandered there, not you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I will find a way at some point to slander you, but that was not you. No. All right. Where are we starting? We're going to get to Steelers-Eagles. A lot of Steelers-Eagles today. Steagles. We're gonna put together an all-star team of the Steelers and the Eagles. And it'll be a nice way to kind of do a little tail of the tape. Who's got an advantage at which position? We'll do that coming up probably around 9 o'clock. We starting with Rich Rod or are we starting with Belichick?
Let's start with Rich Rod and your thoughts.
It's tough, man. It's complicated, but yes. Good hire. If you look at the recent resume and you look at what he did at Jack State, coming from an FCS level to almost immediately winning a championship, I think people would go, okay, that's a good hire. And then you wrap into what he did at West Virginia, failed at Michigan undoubtedly, no question about that. Then you look at what he did at Arizona. Nobody wins there. Nobody. Jed Fish did. Still had a losing record there overall, gets hired to Washington, which has been the college football playoffs. So it's tough to win there. He took them to a Fiesta Bowl. He's a good coach. But most importantly, and this is what pushed me over the edge because I've wrestled with this. I mean, he hurt a lot of people. 1.8 million people he hurt. He wouldn't have been able to walk around that state for 3 years after that. But he's going to have a financial backing in a way that we've never seen for West Virginia football. And it's all about dollars. So I think it's going to work. Now, to what end? Are you going to be contending for conference championships every year? No. Can he contend for a conference championship or two? I think the answer is yes. But I'm interested in what you guys think.
Yeah, I mean, I think on its face it makes sense. I mean, I thought they'd go that direction from the beginning.
Yeah.
A couple things, right? The second tenures almost never work.
Correct.
Never. Mac Brown didn't work. Don Brown didn't work at UMass. Randy Edsel didn't work at UConn. You can go Johnny Majors, too, at Pitt was a disaster. They almost never work. However, I would say that Rich Rod's trajectory is probably a little bit different than what you see with those. So I would give them a pass on that category of being like, oh, you can't do it because it's a second. Well, he's revived his career. I mean, he's been coaching. Mac Brown was doing TV.
Right.
Now, what I would say, too, is, his ace guy in the hole is now the head coach at Marshall, Tony Gibson. The Big East, they're not recruiting Pittsburgh anymore. They're not recruiting Western Pennsylvania like they were. They're going to have to tap into Florida and all the areas that they started to do towards the end of his tenure at West Virginia. So the conference tie, the Pitt rivalry, it's there, but it's not for a conference.
Correct.
It's not conference implications. So I think that the atmosphere, the environment's different. But again, I would say it's a passing grade hire. I think it checks all the boxes, and probably more important than anything for West Virginia fans, it completes the circle. And
well, it can.
It can, but it does. But it gives you a chance to complete the circle.
Correct.
And the next thing that'll happen is, DeVry will go 500 and they'll bring Huggy back.
Right.
And it'll be just a happy reunion in Morgantown.
I'll say this because I have so much passion for college football and I love college football. So I'm going to take off my Pitt hat a little bit right now. I don't think that there was a culture problem at West Virginia. I don't think that they needed a makeover. They just needed a true leader. They need a true leader and somebody who gets West Virginia and who gets West Virginia football. And this guy does at the end of the day. And I know how it ended. But he understands the landscape of what needs to be done and how to engage West Virginia fans. And he doesn't need to come in and say, implement an offense or create and figure out, what quarterback can fit his system. This is not. He walks in. I said this yesterday. He could walk in today into the facility and just flick the lights on and say, let's go. Like, he isn't a Neil Brown that's taking a chance. It's coming from Troy. This guy understands what he needs to do. He has won at Jack State. He's going to bring guys from Jack State. We've seen it. We've seen that happen a lot and be successful. Even with Cade Bell bringing in Desmond Reed.
Yep.
We've seen that happen. So guys can translate their game from a lower-ish level to playing at a high level. So that I think that, as Pat said, it's very less likely that it's a super success, but the guy understands West Virginia football, and that's exactly who they needed right now.
And the difference between this and all those sequels that you brought up is it's a totally different world, and he's going to have money. Now, does it guarantee anything? No. Sure as bleep helps. Athletic Director West Virginia said they're going to be spending at or near the revenue sharing cap next year. And Ken Kendrick, the owner of the Arizona Diamondbacks, I'm pretty sure pounded the table to get this done. So my understanding is it was not going to be rich unless there were some promises made, and there were some promises made. Can we fast forward to September 13th next year, though? Because I think what has been the rivalry's been great since it's been back. They've played 3 competitive games where the atmospheres have been outstanding, and it's what college football is all about. What they've missed is the back and forth.
Right.
Like Pat Narduzzi ain't afraid to say stuff. Rich Rod ain't afraid to say stuff. I love that.
Yeah.
And Neil Brown, he's just not that guy. He's not that guy. So I think that will be very interesting. And it has not been interesting for the last 3 years.
No, I mean, the games have been interesting.
Yes.
2 years ago was interesting in a different way than the last 2. But, my question for West Virginia fans is what would Rich Rod need to do to absolve himself of December 1st, 2007? I mean, unlike all the other sequels, he left West Virginia at the absolute bottom of where he could have.
Correct.
Whereas Mac Brown was incredibly successful at Carolina, won a national championship at Texas. Johnny Majors won a national championship at Pitt and came back. Now, I think the goalposts were different for both coaches coming back to those schools. I think certainly for Johnny Majors, the back to the future mentality was certainly there, but the world in 1994 was a lot different than 1976.
Yeah.
And I think the same is true for Rich Rodriguez. However, there was a positive, it was a universal positive taste in the mouth of every Pitt fan when Johnny Majors came back. I don't think you can say that about
It's not. No, it's not.
I think there's a group of higher-ups that like Rich Rod a lot, Ken Kendrick being one of them, others I know, that wanted this to come back, because I think if you're and I'm not criticizing them. If you're objective, that's the best that program's ever been for a consistent period of time in decades. You look back, and then they parlayed it. Holgerson parlayed it, and they had some good teams after that.
Sure.
But objectively, yeah, you were on the doorstep of a national championship and didn't get there. And is that as close as you're going to get? Who knows? But the guy that got you there, his whole tenure isn't defined by one night. As much as we like to say that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I'm surprised to hear you say that, but you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. But I think in the minds and hearts of the Mountaineer faithful, that's always going to loom over his head.
No doubt. And so you ask, what does he need to do? I think he needs to win a conference championship and get to the playoff.
Right.
So that you're, quote unquote, competing for a national championship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he needs to start 3-0 next year.
Well, the Big 12 is far from a great conference.
No, it's.
I mean, look what Kenny Dillingham and Arizona State were able to do this year. He's going to have money. I'm firmly on the side of this is a good hire. I just think that, if this was pole vaulting, the bar is very high.
Well, real quick, and then we're going to get into Bill Belichick, because that's fascinating for different reasons.
It's more fascinating, quite frankly.
With you 100%. There is a chance, and it might be 50-50. I don't think it's 50-50. It might be 50-50 that this becomes a joke.
Well, they have to win. They have to be Pitt.
They have.
I think it really comes down to that. I know, and obviously, we want to win that game very bad. But you lose that game, the third game of the year.
Yep.
In Morgantown.
And then the series goes on a hiatus for 3 years?
Yep.
Maybe?
It comes down to that. Honestly, in my opinion, this isn't
You're 100%
stick or anything.
right. You're 100%.
Oh, yeah.
You have to win that football game.
We have to win it. You guys really, really want to win it.
Yes.
But we have to win it. Absolutely. No doubt about that.
Listen, I think it's big for both
Absolutely.
programs, but for in terms of a jumping off point, That's the only one. For
You're telling me beating Ohio or Robert Morris won't do that?
losing to them would be a jumping off point. I mean, you would be off the wagon at that point, and Pitt would be your salvage. But they're not going to lose those games. Knock on wood, because I want both teams to be in great stead coming into that game. But I agree with Dorin. I mean, I think it's on 9:30. All the narratives, man. Like again, all the narratives that really don't matter. Like they really don't. When it comes down to like, is West Virginia going to win the Big 12 and get to the playoff? 9-13, that game, that rivalry, that hatred, that vitriol, it really doesn't matter for what you just said they needed to do for him to be successful. That's what makes it so fascinating.
It is
it's because there's just a dichotomy, and there's multiple lenses you can look at this through. And I think in all cases you say this makes sense. However, what are we saying in 4 years?
Yep.
And heck, 2 years.
Yep.
And
what are we saying on September 14th?
Right. It's just fascinating, but it in a messy, complicated, full circle way, it's probably the right hire.